Today marks the 20th anniversary of my marriage, a moment that seemed almost sacred at one point in time. The house, bathed in the golden light of the living room, was quiet. It was a peaceful, soft glow, casting long shadows on the walls that had borne the marks of our shared history. Walls that had been painted together so many years ago. Each stroke a memory, each color a reflection of past joys and struggles. The warmth of the light seemed to echo our former love, familiar, comfortable, yet tinged with the inevitability of time's passage. I had spent the afternoon preparing a meal, a ritual I had maintained every year since our wedding. The kind of meal I had mastered, the kind Marcus always said reminded him of simpler times, when love was untainted by the weight of years. The table was set, each dish arranged with care. A small vase of fresh flowers in the center, a detail so simple, yet so potent in its symbolism of care and attention. Everything looked just as it had in the past, the comfort of routine. Even Marcus, the man I had spent 23 years with, was the same, or so I thought. He sat across from me in his familiar cardigan, a marker of tradition, as it had been for so many special occasions. His hair neatly combed, his face marked with the lines of time, deeper now, but still recognizable. And yet something was terribly out of place. In his arms, he cradled a baby, barely a month old. Its presence, in this room, on this night, felt almost surreal. The infant's cry shattered the stillness, a sharp, high-pitched sound that seemed to tear through the fabric of time itself. It broke the illusion of peace, the illusion of a love that had endured. It was as though the very air had thickened with the weight of unspoken truths. I watched Marcus, the man I had once loved, shift uncomfortably, his eyes clouded with unspoken remorse and a silent plea for understanding. He cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice was fragile, as if the words themselves might crumble under the weight of his guilt. "Jacqueline, I know I have let you down." His voice quivered with the strain of unexpressed sorrow. There it was, the admission not of love, but of a responsibility twisted by tradition. "I am a man," he continued, as if that statement could explain everything. "I couldn't disappoint my mother, and I couldn't be the one to end the Flynn family line." His words were a delicate dance, excuses wrapped in the cloak of duty, tradition, and guilt. I sat still, my mind a quiet storm. The man before me was not the man I had known. This was a stranger wrapped in the guise of my husband. The reality of his betrayal hung in the air, heavy and bitter. He had never spoken of this before, not in anger, not in vulnerability, not even in moments of quiet reflection. He had made this choice, in solitude, hidden behind a wall of expectation. He had gone out, found someone else, and fathered a child, one who now occupied the space between us like an uninvited guest, a symbol of broken trust. I took a long breath, slow and deliberate, before asking the one question that had taken root in my mind. "Maze?" Marcus froze, the blood drained from his face. His eyes searched mine, as though expecting anger or devastation to emerge. But there was only stillness. "I do now," I replied evenly, my voice devoid of the emotional chaos he had expected. He seemed taken aback, unsure of how to navigate the calmness that had settled in the room. His next words were tentative, almost pleading. "Then, can you accept it?" I didn't respond with words. Instead, I stood up, moved past him, and gently took the baby from his arms. His hands tightened reflexively, as though unwilling to let go, even though the weight of the child was no longer his burden to carry. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped outside. The cool evening air wrapped itself around me, like the lifting of a veil, cold, cleansing, and necessary. I turned and locked eyes with Marcus for one final moment. Then I closed the door behind him. The finality of it echoed in my bones. He stood there for nearly 10 minutes, knocking, his pleas growing louder, more desperate. But the answer had already been given. One of our neighbors eventually shouted at him to stop, and his footsteps retreated, his sense of entitlement fading with every step. I returned to the table, sat down, and picked up my fork. The meal I had prepared was still warm. The act of eating, of sustaining myself, was a quiet reminder Life does not pause for heartbreak. The body still needs nourishment. The heart, though bruised, must continue. Time moves forward, whether we are ready or not. Just because I had chosen not to bring a child into this world did not mean I would raise one born out of lies. And so, as I sat alone, I reminded myself that Marcus must have truly lost his mind if he thought I would ever accept this. Accept him, or the child, as if nothing had changed. The next day, Marcus returned, not alone but with his mother, Kira. The woman who had once welcomed me into her home with warmth and understanding now stood before me, arms crossed, eyes hard. The love I had once sensed in her was gone, replaced by an unyielding sorrow. Her words, though shaped by emotion, seemed rehearsed, as though she had practiced this speech in her mind over and over, trying to find a way to justify the unthinkable. "Jacqueline," she began, her voice trembling with a mixture of grief and resolution. "Marcus did wrong, yes. But what's done is done. We are a family. Families face hardships together." She paused, wiping her eyes with a tissue, before continuing, her words heavy with the weight of tradition. "If you had been willing to have children, Marcus wouldn't have looked elsewhere. At your age, even if you leave him now, all you'll do is raise someone else's child. Why make this harder than it needs to be?" Her words stung, not because of their harshness, but because they revealed a fundamental truth: the manipulation of guilt. She wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was trying to rewrite history, to bend reality, to fit the narrative of duty and familial obligation. She finished with a tremble, her voice cracking as she whispered, "We've given so much to your marriage over these 20 years. The words, though seemingly filled with compassion, were nothing more than a plea for compliance, a call to surrender to the weight of tradition, to accept the unacceptable. I stood there, watching the woman who had once shown me kindness, now attempt to bend me to her will. It was a moment of clarity, a realization that the only thing that could be expected in this situation was for me to continue living my truth, no matter how painful or isolating it might feel. The lines etched on Kira's face were not just the marks of age. They were the silent testament of years filled with sacrifice, of a woman who had devoted herself to the ideals of family and tradition. As I looked at her now, I struggled to recognize the woman who had once held my hand and praised my strength. The same Kira who, so many years ago, had wept beside Marcus, promising to support our decision to live a child-free life. In that moment, I saw the contradiction in her eyes, the silent war between what she had once understood and what she had come to believe. Marcus had been raised in a small town, surrounded by the rigid expectations of a community where a woman without children was almost an anomaly. I understood that pressure. It was why, when Marcus first proposed, I had hesitated. But he had insisted. He looked me in the eyes and assured me, with all the certainty of youth, that he loved me for who I was. He promised that he would never try to change me. After the tragic death of my parents, when I was lost in grief, Marcus proposed again. This time he came with Kira, trembling, eyes filled with tears, offering a promise of unconditional support. That was when I first met her, and in that moment, I was struck by how unexpectedly open-minded she seemed, given her background. I believed that 20 years of marriage would be enough to truly understand someone. How mistaken I had been. Words were spoken that day, words wrapped in guilt, in blame. Yet, in the end, they carried no weight. The truth, like an uninvited guest, stood quietly in the room: Marcus's child. That child was louder than any apology, any excuse, any tearful plea. It was the child who had the final say. It was the child that revealed everything I needed to know, shattering the image of the man I thought I had known. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The years of Marcus holding on to me, the years of playing the part of a devoted husband, all made sense now. He had been hiding something, just as a gambler gives his last card. And now, with a child in his arms, he expected what? Acceptance? Forgiveness? The reality was, it had always been about control, about a need for stability, for legacy, for something tangible to leave behind. And in the end, it seemed it was always about money. Marcus, sensing the shift in the room, chose his words carefully, as if each one was part of a delicate negotiation. Jacqueline, he began, his voice steady but tinged with desperation. Just give us a straight answer. What are you thinking right now? They both looked at me, their faces tight with tension. They were unsettled by my calmness. I leaned back against the couch, crossing my legs with deliberate ease. My gaze moved between them, cool and detached, as though I were observing a scene from a distance. Not involved, but curious. Finally, I spoke, my voice dry and unwavering. What is there to think about? I asked, almost rhetorically. Do you want me to help pick out a name for the baby? And then, with a finality that seemed to hang in the air, I gave my verdict. We should get a divorce. You move out first. I'll let the lawyers handle the rest. Kira's reaction was immediate, a visceral eruption of disbelief and outrage. She sprang to her feet, her face contorted in a mixture of anger and helplessness. You heartless woman, she cried. Marcus has been nothing but good to you. I've been good to you. And now you want to end a marriage over something so small? She closed the distance between us, her voice rising, as though increasing the volume might somehow validate her position. What about the child? What happens to the baby if you separate? Are you really going to leave Marcus to raise it all by himself? Her words were desperate, and beneath the anger, there was an almost pleading note. Don't pretend you never wanted a child. You said it yourself. You were only scared of the pain. Well, we've taken care of that for you. We are giving you a beautiful, healthy baby to raise, and you still refuse. Why? Her desperation filled the room, thick and suffocating. It was a strategy, I realized. She was attempting to paint me as the villain, to twist the narrative until I was the one who had failed the family, the one who had refused an opportunity for growth. But the truth could not be manipulated by words, not anymore. Marcus, sensing an opportunity, joined in, his voice soft and almost trembling, as though tenderness could sway me. Honey, we've been together for so many years, he said, his eyes searching mine. Are you telling me you feel nothing for me at all? His hand reached out, as if trying to grasp something, anything, that might bridge the chasm between us. I swear I only love you. Even when I was with Mila, I was thinking of you. That was just a way to fix something we couldn't fix together. I never loved her, not for a second. His words, though smooth, were weighted with the practiced sincerity of a man who had learned to say the right things, to make his actions fit a narrative. I know this is hard to accept, he continued, his voice thick with the effort of emotional manipulation. But if you just calm down and think it through, you'll see it's not such a big deal. Nothing has to change. Our life will stay the same, except now we'll have a lovely baby to share it with. It's like having a little dog, something to care for. Just think about it a bit more. All right? I stared at him, not because I didn't understand his words, but because they seemed so far removed from any sense of reality. How had we reached this point? How had we arrived at such a warped understanding of love, family, and responsibility? I could no longer follow the logic of their arguments. It felt like a mental labyrinth with no escape. I had no energy to argue, so I did what felt most true to myself. Slowly, deliberately, I picked up my phone. I scrolled through my contacts and found Marcus's supervisor's number. I looked at both of them, my voice steady, the calm of someone who had already made peace with the decision. If either of you says one more word, I said, my gaze unwavering, I will call him. It's the weekend. Uncle Joe is not busy. He can come over, and we can all have a proper conversation. I am sure he will love to help clear things up. As I spoke, I gestured toward the door with an open palm, a silent but unmistakable invitation to leave. They hesitated for a moment, then stood up. Reluctantly, the color drained from their faces. Defeated, embarrassed, angry. Just as they reached the door, Kira spun around and held one last line over her shoulder. This marriage is not yours alone. To end her words fell heavy in the hallway, but I did not flinch. I already knew this was not going to be easy in this house. I was the one who kept everything afloat. Marcus, despite his 4 to 5 years and his modest leadership title at work, barely made enough to cover the basics. His income was just enough to maintain stability, not comfort, not dreams. If we divorced, he would lose everything. The steady home, the lifestyle, the picture-perfect dream of 3 generations under one roof, welcoming a miracle child. That illusion was too precious for him to let go of easily, but he would have to. But I had no intention of letting them enjoy a peaceful life either. Not after everything they had done. I simply needed to move quickly because some people, whether they realized it or not, were running out of time. In the days that followed, I found myself the center of sudden and unexpected attention. People I had not heard from in years began reaching out. The calls, messages, and emails came in a steady stream from distant relatives who had long fallen out of touch, from college friends who had once shared my laughter and now only shared rumors, even from old girlfriends who had quietly slipped out of my life without a word. They all sounded so concerned, so invested in my well-being, like they had been waiting for just this moment to reappear. It did not take long to understand why. Ever since I had made it known that I did not intend to have children, there had always been a quiet chorus of disapproval humming in the background of my life. Some people were more vocal than others, offering advice and warnings as if my choice were a temporary illness they could cure with persistence, especially in the early years. Every family gathering, every coffee catch-up seemed to circle back to the same tired subject. It felt less like conversation and more like a public health campaign. But time passed. They had children of their own, diapers, school runs, mortgages. All of it took their attention elsewhere. Eventually, their lectures faded into occasional remarks. Brief suggestions slipped beneath photos I posted from vacations or holiday dinners. It became something they had accepted, or at least learned to live with. Until now, Marcus's scandal had stirred up the still waters again. And suddenly, everyone had something to say. The tone had shifted from casual suggestion to heartfelt intervention. Their voices grew soft and serious, full of urgency. Cloaked in care, "Do not be so stubborn." They said having a child would be good for you both. One old friend, who used to be my closest confidant, even said gently, "Just think of it as doing a good deed, like adopting a stray." I smiled at that. Not outwardly, of course, but somewhere deep inside, because I am not in the business of offering free emotional labor. I am not a shelter. I am not anyone's savior. In just 1 week, I had blocked nearly 50 people, friends, family, acquaintances. It did not matter if they crossed the line, they were gone. Strangely enough, it seemed to make Marcus even bolder, as if the attention had sparked something in him, fed some twisted hope. Either he had lost his grip on reality entirely, or he mistook all this noise for encouragement. On Monday evening, I returned home after work, tired and ready for quiet instead. I found a scene waiting for me on the doorstep. There they stood, an entire little family. Marcus, with his carefully combed hair and confident stance. The father, Mila, standing slightly behind him. The mother, and the child. I, whose name I had never cared to ask. It was almost theatrical. All they lacked was a camera crew. Looking at them, I felt the weight of the past 2 decades pressed gently against my chest. So this was what he had traded me for, a woman half his age. I, standing awkwardly, with her hands clenched at her sides, and a child who blinked up at me, without understanding why the air was so heavy. Marcus, now in his 40s, still looked annoyingly youthful. His tailored shirt fit just right, and his smile was rehearsed. As always, he stood close enough to Mila that they looked like a matched pair, perhaps on the outside. They even looked happy, but I laughed quietly. Coldly, Mila's eyes were already brimming with tears, her lips trembling as she tried to hold herself together. It was not the first time I had seen that look. She had joined my company fresh out of college 3 years ago, bright-eyed, eager, calling me big sister with a sweetness that almost felt sincere. "Thank you for giving me a chance," she had said more than once, her gratitude, wide-eyed and glowing. And I had given her a chance. I gave her a place to grow, to learn, to build something for herself. A good chance, an excellent one, as it turned out, the chance to become a mother. So I said, my voice, even in quiet, Why are you here today? The question cracked something inside her. Mila burst into tears, and for a moment I thought she might collapse. She moved suddenly, bending her knees, trying to kneel. I did not stop her. Marcus made no move either, frozen by the weight of the moment. He looked between us but said nothing. Mila lowered herself to the ground, her voice trembling. Jacqueline, she said, tears sliding down her cheeks. I came to admit my mistake. I'm so sorry. I should never have let myself fall for you on. I should have known better. I should have stopped it. She wiped her face with shaking hands and choked out another sentence. I do not want you to get divorced because of me. I am willing to give up the child. I just want to be able to watch you all from afar, to see you happy. It was a quiet plea, offered from her knees on my doorstep, but I did not move, not to comfort her, not to respond, because what she wanted, what they both wanted, was peace, and I was no longer interested in offering that. I could not help but laugh, the sound sharp and sudden in the heavy air. Well, that is news to me, I said, raising an eyebrow. I had no idea you were some kind of guardian angel of fertility. Funny how you left that little detail off your resume. Then I looked her square in the eyes. My voice was calm, but there was no warmth in it, if I'm understanding you correctly. You are saying you have no intention of being a mother yourself. You will let me raise your child while you watch from the sidelines. Is that what you are proposing? I leaned in just a little, lowering my voice for effect. And let me guess, when I am gone, you expect to inherit everything I built, everything I sacrificed for, all neat and tidy, wrapped up with a bow. That is your plan, is it not? I let the words linger in the silence between us before continuing. Really, with all this scheming, you might as well save us the trouble and start calling me Mom right now. Mila's face went through a spectrum of color, first red with rage, then pale with shame, then flushed again, as if her pride and fury were battling each other. Her mouth opened and closed, but she said nothing. Meanwhile, Marcus remained frozen beside her, as useless as ever, too cowardly to intervene, while the mother of his child stood there being stripped bare by words alone. The truth is simple. In this world, weakness invites aggression. People sense it and they act on it. It is a law older than any written. They still had more to say. That much was clear, but by then the quiet of the hallway outside had started to stir with footsteps and voices. Neighbors were coming home, and the noise of doors opening and closing reminded Marcus where we were concerned about the growing attention. He finally reached down and helped Mila to her feet. Then he turned to me with a look of wounded pride and said, "Honey, is this really the end? Is there truly nothing left to say?" I looked at him steadily and replied with a single word, "No." For a moment, he held still. Then he squared his shoulders, forcing a stiffness into his posture. That felt like a final performance. "Fine," he said. "I have said every kind thing I could think of, but do not imagine for a second that you are innocent in all this." He stepped forward, lowering his voice, in a way he must have thought sounded threatening. "I have evidence. When the divorce goes through, you will owe me half of everything." His eyes narrowed and he added, "I am giving you 1 week to cool off. We can talk again this weekend. But if things get ugly, do not blame me for dropping the politeness just as he said it." I caught something fleeting, but unmistakable in Meatless' expression, a glint of satisfaction, a subtle lift at the corner of her lips. She really was something I had once admired. Her skills. She could handle the workload of 3 employees, did not complain, and even took it upon herself to collect information without being asked. But now I was curious, what exactly did they think they had on me? What piece of evidence made them so sure they could walk away with my money? As it turned out, I did not have to wait long to find out. Thursday morning came quiet and gray. I had just stepped into the office, ready to begin the day, when Ruby burst into my office, her face pale and eyes wide with panic. "Madam," she said, almost breathless, "you need to check your inbox right now. Everyone in the company got it." I frowned and opened the company email. Right at the top was a message flagged important, and the subject line read like something torn from a scandal sheet. "Married. CEO works tirelessly for the company. Stays up late every night. It had the flair of one of those old gossip magazine headlines: sensational, shameless, and clearly intended to provoke. It was ridiculous, yet I could not help but click to my surprise. There were no words in the body of the email. No context, no explanation, just a long string of photographs. Image after image showed me dining and drinking with various men. Some photos, catching the moments. We got into the same car. No captions, no commentary. Just enough ambiguity to let the viewer draw whatever conclusions they wanted. And it had been sent to every single employee in the company. I scrolled back up. The sender's address was masked, hidden behind layers of anonymous forwarding. But I did not need to guess. Mila had clearly made this her parting gift before quitting. She must have spent days gathering those email addresses, memorizing contacts, and planning her little show. One last attempt to make a statement. It made me think somewhat dryly that I was fortunate. I had never taken the company public or pushed it into the Fortune 500. If I had, she might have felt compelled to learn how to write a data scraping program just to keep up with the scale. Ruby burst into my office not long after. Her voice was tight with concern. "Boss, what should we do? This kind of rumor, it really damages your reputation. Do you want me to call a lawyer?" I waved her off with a faint smile. Not amused, but not alarmed either. Just keep the evidence. That is enough. She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip. Should I let the team know? Maybe hold a meeting to clear the air? I'm just worried people might start looking at you differently. And that, of course, was exactly what they were hoping for. Their goal was never truth. It was fear to shake me, to embarrass me, to corner a woman using the one weapon society always keeps sharpened for us: reputation. But they had chosen the wrong target. I was not a celebrity. I did not make a living by being adored. I was not trying to play the part of the ideal woman. And frankly, their tactics were so juvenile, they barely scratched the surface. If anything, I was more disappointed than offended. I shook my head and replied quietly, "No need. Those photos were not doctored. I have poured my heart into this company, and every person in those pictures was a client or a business partner, taking them out for dinner, sharing a drink, giving someone a ride home. These are all ordinary things in our line of work. Do you think the male executives do any less? If they can do it without question, why should I be judged for the same?" Ruby still looked uneasy. Her concern was sincere, and I appreciated that. "I get what you are saying," she said softly, "but still, if someone with bad intentions twists this, could it hurt your standing in the industry? I smiled at her a little, sadly, but firmly. "Ruby, you are kind, and I know you mean well. But let me tell you something. My place in this business is not built on who I dine with or how I smile at a table. It is built on the quality of what I produce, the strength of my relationships, and the profits I help others make. And as for reputation, well, I am a businesswoman. The best reputation I could ever ask for is a successful company." Ruby blinked, taking it in. I could see she was still learning. Young women often are, especially when the world tells them over and over that their image matters more than their substance. I used to believe that too. Maybe that is part of why I got married in the first place. Back then, I thought being respectable, being good, being chosen meant something solid, something lasting. But after all these years, swimming in the cold, sharp waters of business, after watching the man I once trusted Marcus decay into someone unrecognizable, I have learned otherwise. Now watching people like Mila still try to weaponize public opinion to dangle old ideas of virtue like bait, hoping I will flinch, I can only laugh. They have no idea how far past that I have come. By all means, I wish them luck at this point. I had already given them more grace than they deserved. Now it was time for me to take what was mine on Saturday. I arrived at the restaurant right on schedule. My lawyer beside me inside the private room. Marcus, Kira, and Mila sat together, their smugness practically dripping off their faces. I said nothing. As I took my seat, my lawyer calmly handed them the divorce agreement. Marcus barely touched the folder before Kira and Mila swooped in like flies drawn to his scent. but as they began reading, their faces quickly darkened. Jacqueline Marcus muttered, clearly agitated. "Did you not check your email?" Mila leaned in, her tone sharp. "Next time, I cannot promise. Only company staff will see it." My lawyer spoke up without missing a beat. "Mila, I would like to state for the record that this meeting is being recorded in full. Furthermore, the email you sent has already been documented and preserved as evidence. Should there be any future attempts to harm my client's reputation, we will pursue legal action accordingly." She was doing exactly what I needed. Firm, efficient, and sharp as a tack. Money well spent with people like this, arguing back and forth over petty drama, is simply a waste of brain cells. Mila quieted down, but Kira jumped in without missing a beat. Clearly, the three of them had planned a tag. Team ambush. Jacqueline, Kira said in a tone that tried to sound reasonable. "You and Marcus have been married for 20 years. Even if he has not contributed much, he still stood by you through it all. With terms like these, you are basically leaving him with nothing. Do you have no conscience if you have concerns about the agreement?" My lawyer responded calmly. "I am authorized to negotiate on behalf of my client." Kira was just about to fly into a rage when Marcus, his face flushed with embarrassment, quickly held her back. He was trying hard to keep up appearances, but the forced smile on his lips gave him away. Years of carefully polished charm crumbled under pressure, revealing the truth beneath. Marcus looked at me and said, his voice tight with frustration, "Jacqueline, do you really think we got to this point without you having done anything wrong?" I raised an eyebrow and held back my lawyer, who was clearly ready to pounce. "Let him talk," I said calmly. Perhaps my willingness to listen gave Marcus a glimmer of hope. His expression became more animated, desperate, even like someone clinging to the edge of a cliff. "I know bringing the child home so suddenly was wrong," Marcus said, "but I did not ask for your opinion because I know you. We have been married for 20 years. I understand how you feel about having children, but I am only human, son." I could not resist the pressure from society, from my family. I wanted a child. He paused, then continued, his tone softening. "Yes, I was wrong to act without telling you. Maybe I thought too highly of the place I held in your heart. I thought maybe you could understand." Mila agreed to give up the child so we could raise him together. "Could you not give our marriage another chance? I promise. From now on, I will love only you and treat you well for the rest of our lives." His eyes were full of pleading. He looked like a gambler watching the dice fall, hoping against hope that luck would be on his side. This time I regretted letting him speak. I had overestimated him, foolishly thinking he might have something sincere to say. "Are you finished?" I asked. Then I laughed coldly and said, "You really are something. I am here talking to you about money, and you bring up love." I looked him straight in the eye. "Marcus, whatever love we had ended the moment you got into bed with that woman beside you, and to make things worse, you brought home the product of that betrayal, a child. You want me to accept that?" I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm and sharp. "Just sign the papers. You are not losing out. You have lived comfortably for years with my support. The money I saved will be more than enough for you two to live on after that." No matter how Marcus and the others pleaded, I said nothing more. Realizing there was no turning back, Marcus reluctantly signed the divorce agreement as he stood to leave. Kira, unwilling to accept defeat, held one last insult at me from the doorway. "Jacqueline," she shouted, "you are nothing now but a worn-out shoe. No one wants a barren old hen. You think anyone will want you after Marcus? When you grow old and lonely, do not come crawling back to us." I smiled sweetly, right back at you that Monday under the watchful eye of the law. I finally received my divorce certificate. It shimmered in my hand like a badge of freedom to celebrate. I prepared one final gift for my freshly minted ex-husband. "Oh, by the way," I said casually, "I did not get the chance to tell you on our anniversary. You have been diagnosed with liver cancer. Has no one mentioned how yellow you look lately?" I took in the stunned expressions on Marcus and Kira's faces, then turned my gaze toward Mila and offered her a long, meaningful smile. Marcus and Kira both caught that look. Kira jumped from her seat and charged toward Mila. "You little tramp," Kira screamed. You knew Marcus was sick, and you did not tell us." Mila, startled, backed away and cried out, "I did not know. I swear, I really didn't. Jacqueline is trying to hurt me. She did this on purpose," but Kira clearly did not believe her. The air thickened with tension as the two women looked ready to tear into each other. I had no interest in watching their drama unfold. My lawyer and I left the office in peace, not looking back. Let them argue, their troubles were only beginning. But if we are talking about surprises, the anniversary day still wins. In a way, Marcus and I had both prepared something unexpected for each other. Neither of our gifts was pleasant. My original plan had been to tell Marcus about his diagnosis, discuss his treatment options, and maybe even talk about what arrangements should be made for Kira in her old age. I was willing to be decent, but that unexpected child in his arms erased any trace of kindness I had left. I had known about Mila for some time. This was not Marcus's first affair. Mila had only been at the company a short while when she met Marcus at a team outing. He was there as the boss's husband, and I have to admit, for a fresh-faced girl just out of college, Marcus probably fit every fantasy of a charming older gentleman. A calm voice, neatly combed silver, streaked hair, expensive shoes, and the practiced smile of a man who had spent decades getting what he wanted. He always did know how to play a part, but this time the curtain had fallen. He always took good care of himself. His figure stayed in shape, and over the years, as he moved in my world and met more people, that timid, unsure boy I once knew from school faded away. He grew more confident, more polished. I cannot say for sure when he and Mila started their affair, but there was one moment that told me everything I needed to know. One day, Mila came to my office to give a routine report. Just as she finished, Marcus arrived to pick me up. The way Mila looked at him, quick, almost involuntary, and the strange tension that passed between them told me all I needed. Couples in love often think they are good at hiding their feelings, but that sticky, quiet pull between them, it cannot be hidden. Why did I not mind, you might wonder? Perhaps it is because that was always the hollow part of our marriage. In the beginning, I did feel something for Marcus, but over time, his constant scheming wore that feeling down to nothing. He was always calculating when to propose, how to behave, how to never let himself be on the losing end of anything. He was too careful, always wanting to gain a little more from me. And slowly, he chipped away at any affection I still had for him. I came from a family of business people. I was raised to read people well, and to be, as my father used to say, cold but clear-eyed. He always said I was born for business. That is probably why I never rushed to divorce Marcus, even when the love was gone. The title of married woman saved me a lot of time and trouble in business. A single woman has to work twice as hard for half the respect. Being married gave me cover, a sense of stability. Others respected. So what made me finally decide to leave? The answer is simple. He crossed a line. When someone grows too greedy, when they are no longer satisfied with getting the best they can from life, and start eyeing the very hand that feeds them, they become worthless. And I have no use for worthless things. He stopped being useful the moment he targeted me, not just as a wife, but as a provider. And just like they thought they could trap me, they forgot something else. I'm 45. It is a fine age, useful in many ways. I no longer need Marcus to maintain the image of a married woman. That part is over. But let me be clear, I'm not a kind person. Anyone who feeds off me, drinks from my cup, and then thinks they can steal from me and enjoy some picture-perfect family life, I will make sure they are left with nothing. After all, there is an old saying, a woman who is not ruthless will never keep her place. 3 months later, Marcus ended up in the hospital, not because of an illness, but from a car accident. I had just finished a meeting when I got the call. It was Kira. The lack of boundaries in that woman still managed to annoy me. "Jacqueline," Kira pleaded over the phone, her voice already thick with tears. "I am begging you, help Marcus. The doctors will not lift a finger without payment. They have no heart. I cut her off before she could go any further. Marcus has a tidy little savings account. You do not need to worry about money if it is really so hard for you. I can be generous and help set up a fundraiser. I said I was not bluffing. Over the past 20 years of our marriage, Marcus had been allowed to handle a few business projects under my watch. He had money enough to keep himself alive. Certainly, Kira was not asking because they had no funds. She was just being stingy. She knew the good days were behind them, and the money would not flow as easily from now on. Oh, and a little friendly tip I added. You might want to have someone check the car. You may find a surprise or two. Kira did not understand what I meant, but she hung up quickly, and that was the last I heard from her for a while. I figured she had her hands full. Now, 2 weeks later, their story hit the news. Mila had been arrested at just 25. She had already been sentenced to 15 years in prison for intentionally causing injury to another person in order to claim insurance money. As soon as her breastfeeding period ended, she would be taken away. I was not shocked, but I did gain a new understanding of how far her ruthlessness could go. That same ruthlessness Marcus had once found useful. That same ruthless edge he had once thought he could use to outplay me. And now he was left, broken in a hospital bed. She was behind bars, all because they thought I would never notice, or because they thought I would never fight back out of a sense of basic human compassion. I went to the hospital to visit Marcus. It had been months since we last saw each other, and he looked like a different person entirely. I did not know what stage his cancer had progressed to, but the absence of his right leg made him appear alarmingly frail. When I walked in, a strange glimmer appeared on his gaunt, hollow face. "Jacqueline, you came." Marcus said, his voice rough and raspy, nothing like the warm tone I used to know. I sat down beside his hospital bed and said quietly, "I came to see you." Marcus gave a bit of smile. "You must think I brought this on myself." I replied calmly, "That is true." His eyes narrowed and he asked, "So you came all this way just to watch me suffer, to laugh at me?" I found myself smiling faintly, in a way. "Yes, I came to see you and to see the joke you have become." That struck a nerve. The man lying on the bed suddenly burst out in anger. "So I cheated? Is that really enough to make you hate me this much?" I shook my head slowly and replied in a quiet voice, "Marcus, even now you still do not understand what you did wrong, do you? I do not hate you for cheating. Even after I found out, I still thought about how to get you the best treatment. I still tried to arrange care for your mother. What I have always hated is your arrogance, your greed. You knew exactly why you insisted on marrying me. You knew how badly you wanted a son, but you would not divorce me. You dragged it out until I was 4 to 5, and then you tried to force me out by using the boy. You were so confident, so sure that you could plan everything out, even though you had no idea whether you would live long enough to enjoy any of it." I paused, watching his face as the truth sank in. Then I added, "Did you really believe that Mila, a woman in her 20s, had a child with you out of love? If it was love, then why was the very first thing she did, after learning about your illness, to stage a car crash and try to kill you for the insurance money? I laugh at you, Marcus, because you were always willing to do anything for money and power, but you still managed to underestimate Mila and me. So tell me, was it not your own pride and blindness that brought you here? And is this not the most tragic joke of all?" By the time I finished speaking, I felt drained. It had been a long time since I had said so much in one sitting. Just then, the door burst open. Kira stormed into the room, wild-eyed, and shouting, "We have been cursed. That woman tricked us. That little brat is not even a Flynn." Soon after, Marcus slipped into unconsciousness in hospital. Staff asked us to leave the room. Too much stress could be dangerous in his condition. Kira, now silent and pale, sat stiffly on a bench in the hallway. The rage had drained from her, leaving only a numb expression. I turned to leave, but suddenly felt her hand grab my ankle. "Jacqueline," Kira said desperately, "you cannot turn your back on us. You were his wife. You shared so many years together. Please have some mercy. We are all alone now." I gently freed my ankle from her grasp and knelt down to meet her eyes. "Mrs. Flynn," I said calmly, "Marcus and I are divorced. And besides, I am nothing but a used and discarded woman, busy just trying to survive on my own. I have no warmth left to spare for your little family." I stood up slowly. "If something happens again, do not call me. My number has been blocked." After leaving the hospital, I called Ruby to let her know I would be working remotely for the next week. Then I went home, packed a small suitcase, and headed for the airport. Hours later, I arrived on the other side of the world. After stepping out of the terminal, I rented a car and drove straight to the coast. I parked by the shore and sat inside alone waiting for the sun to rise. As I waited, I finished half a pack of cigarettes. The car quickly filled with smoke that had nowhere to go. Then, as the first golden light of sunrise broke through the windshield and touched my face, I finally rolled down the window. The cool sea breeze rushed in and swept away the haze. In that moment, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Clarity, a cleansing, refreshing lightness, as if I had at last stepped out of the fog and into the place I was always meant to reach. The following week, I spent some rare and peaceful time alone in one of the most famous tourist cities in the world. The days passed gently, filled with long walks, quiet meals, and moments of true rest. When the day came for me to return home, Ruby was already waiting at the airport. She rushed over with her usual sparkle, her eyes full of curiosity. "Did you start some exciting new project?" Ruby asked, her voice playful. "You look absolutely radiant." I simply smiled. That trip had been more about letting go than starting anything new. Once back, I eased into my familiar routine at work. Without the strain of managing a broken household, I found myself with more time to truly enjoy life, to read, to meet friends, and to think clearly again. But of course, peace never pleases everyone. That Friday evening, I attended a business cocktail party. The atmosphere was light and buzzing. I was speaking with a few partners about our company's future sharing plans, tossing around ideas full of hope for what the next year might bring. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed Mr. Sir John giving me a discreet glance, followed by a slight nod. I turned to see what he was looking at, and there he was, Marcus, sitting in a wheelchair across the room, staring at me as if I had stolen his soul. I had never gone out of my way to announce our divorce, but nearly everyone in our circle already knew. What they had not seen, however, was what Marcus looked like now. His once sharp and tailored suit now hung loosely on his frame. His skin had turned a pale, sickly yellow. He had not even bothered to shave altogether. He looked both pitiful and worn. I heard someone nearby let out a quiet gasp. Then came the hushed murmurs, the kind that still reached your ears no matter how hard they tried to whisper. "So Marcus, this is the card you want to play now, throwing yourself at my feet in public." I politely excused myself from the conversation and made my way over to him, keeping my expression calm. "Long time no see, Jacqueline." Marcus said, his voice low and his eyes cold, filled with something dark and slithering, like a snake lying in wait. I smiled back with a polite tilt of my head. "Indeed, Mr. Liu, it has been a while. Could we speak privately?" I shrugged and followed him as his wheelchair rolled toward the terrace. Out on the balcony, away from curious eyes and ears, Marcus dropped his mask. "I will make it simple," he said, his voice sharp as ice. "I want 10 million. Give it to me, and I will disappear. You will never see me again." He leaned forward slightly in his chair, his eyes locked on mine. "If not, I will follow you everywhere, every single day. I cannot promise I will keep my mouth shut. I do not know what I might say. I do not know what I might do. Since you clearly do not care about your reputation, I imagine you will not mind having a mad ex-husband around either." He smiled as though the deal was already done. 10 million. That was not a small sum. He was playing a bold hand, not because I feared him tailing me, but because I knew his kind, reckless, unthinking, and capable of causing real damage just to feel powerful. He had chosen his move well. He understood that my business was everything to me. But he made one crucial mistake. He underestimated me. I looked at him and spoke slowly, my voice calm. Mr. Liu, I have to ask what makes you think you can affect my work. First of all, do you think you can even enter my company building? Second, how exactly do you plan to track my location? Lastly, do you believe I built this business on luck alone? I gave him a small amused smile. I can admire your courage, Marcus. It takes guts to gamble like this, but in life, choosing the right direction matters far more than just charging ahead blindly. I paused for a moment, then added, here is a tip. Instead of following me around like a stray dog, maybe you should try going online with your mother and start a live stream. Tell the world your sob story. Invent some lies. Create a little chaos. It would be more effective than this pathetic show. He stared at me and I could see the blood vessels swelling in his eyes. He was fighting to keep his anger in check, but the cracks were showing. I had already said what I came to say without another glance. I turned and walked calmly back into the party. On the way back, a few curious faces could not resist approaching me, eager for gossip. They leaned in with hushed voices, asking what had happened. I did not hide it. In fact, I stated it quite openly. I had divorced Marcus, and when the questions grew more concerned, I sighed and told them the truth. He had betrayed me. He cheated. That was why I left out of the corner of my eye. I caught the look on their faces. Not pity, not shock, but a quiet thrill. People, no matter how polite they try to appear, always have a certain fascination with other people's misfortune. As expected, Marcus wasted no time. The very next day, he went live online with his mother, Kira, sitting beside him. The title of the live stream was so dramatic, I had to wonder if he had written the headline himself. It read, Successful Businesswoman Abandons Disabled Husband. 2 decades of devotion. No match for poverty. Marcus always knew how to stir things up. He was playing the poor against rich card. Now I clicked on the live stream with genuine curiosity, settling back to enjoy the show. After all, I had lived with this man for 20 years. I knew how convincing he could be when he wanted to be, and true to form, he gave a remarkable performance. Perhaps all those years pretending with me had made him an expert with tears in his eyes. Marcus began telling the story of how we met in college, how he was just a poor boy, hopelessly in love with the graceful swan. That was me. He spoke of how he had pursued me for 3 years after graduation, never giving up, and how he had finally confessed his love. After my parents' funeral, he said he regretted not being a better husband, blaming himself for not having the strength to protect me from the demands of our social life. How I had to attend dinners and meet clients late into the night while he stayed home feeling helpless. And then in front of his unseen audience, he wept. As he spoke of missing me, he cried about how painful my departure had been. Jacqueline, he sobbed, I only want to see you one more time. I may be broken now, but if I could just see you, I would feel strong again. Right on cue, Kira dabbed at her eyes beside him. Her aged face lined with wrinkles was a picture of motherly sorrow. The performance was seamless. Together they painted a touching portrait of a man left behind, and a mother watching her beloved son suffer naturally. In that version of the story, I became the villain, the cold-hearted ex-wife, the selfish, ungrateful woman who turned her back on a good man who had given her everything. The comment feed below, the video lit up with sympathy for Marcus and Venom. For me, it scrolled endlessly with words of encouragement for him and cruel speculation about me. Some accused me of looking down on the poor. Others claimed I must have been sleeping around for money. The attacks came from every angle, as if strangers had been waiting their whole lives for a chance to tear someone apart. Even I, watching the whole thing, felt a flicker of disgust at the character they had invented. A woman I hardly recognized that same night. Someone posted my personal details online along with information about my company. Just like that, I became a target. The internet turned into a storm I could not control. The next morning, I arrived at the office as usual, but the air inside felt different. People lowered their heads when they saw me pretending to be busy. A few snuck glances, their curiosity written all over their faces. When they noticed I looked calm, almost cheerful, some of them even seemed confused. Ruby came rushing over with a cup of coffee in her hands. "Boss," she said, "I have already contacted the legal department. Just say the word, and we will take action." I smiled at her, a soft and affectionate smile. I said, "You are more anxious than I am, but thank you." Then I turned to face the rest of the team and raised my voice just enough to be heard across the room. "Everyone, may I have a few minutes of your time?" The room quieted down. I took a breath and continued. "I believe most of you have seen what is going on online. Many of you might also remember the email that was sent a while ago, the one written with such emotional flair. Today, I want to take a moment to speak, honestly, not as your boss, but as a person caught in a very public mess. I want to apologize for letting my private life take up space in your professional world. And I also want to say a few words to those who might be curious about what really happened. My ex-husband had an affair. The woman he cheated with was our former colleague, Mila. She was the one who wrote and sent the email. I divorced him after the two of them had a child together. Not long after that, my ex-husband was diagnosed with liver cancer. Mila, in an attempt to claim the insurance money, staged a car accident that left him disabled. After the accident, my ex-husband's mother came to see me. She pleaded, but I refused to offer financial help. For one, he had enough savings to cover the rest of his treatment. And more importantly, I did not believe I should take responsibility for the emotional mess he had created. As a woman in business, I have been judged for things that have nothing to do with my professionalism. Far too often the criticism I receive is about my morality, my private life, or my character as a woman. And now my ex-husband is using this very prejudice to pressure me in an attempt to force $10 million in cash from me. He has stirred up a campaign online, turning strangers into judges of my private life. This is not just manipulation, it is a crime. So today I ask for your understanding. In the days ahead, there may be disruptions in our company's operations, but I hope we can face this storm together and come through it as one. When I finished speaking, the office fell quiet for a brief moment. No one moved or said a word. Then I heard a soft, "You can do it." Another voice followed, then like a wave. The entire office joined in with cheers and support, their voices rising together. Ruby looked at me with tears glimmering in her eyes. She understood how difficult this journey has been. Most of the women in my company, they have seen what I have endured. I'm not a sentimental person, but when I founded this company, I made choices that were not entirely rational. I have always valued money, yes, but I value even more what this company can stand for. The possibility of building something grounded in equality and respect. That is why even when faced with tighter profits, I often choose strategies that reflect the values I believe in. I have tried my best to create a workplace where people, especially those carrying family burdens, can work and grow with dignity. I was born into a time when women did not have many choices, but I have always been ambitious, so I chose marriage not for love, but because it gave me a name that made life in the business world a little easier. That choice cost me 2 decades. It cost me freedom. Even now, I am forced to waste energy defending myself against baseless accusations. But none of this will stop me because I can see the world changing. I can feel it the very next day. With the support of our legal and public relations teams, I went live online to respond to the rumors. The part where I exposed Marcus's lies went smoothly. I had evidence, and I laid it out clearly. But the toughest part was, as always, the attacks on my character. Some people online clung to the idea that a woman like me, closing deals and having dinner with clients, must be guilty of something shameful. She's a woman landing that many contracts who believes she didn't sleep her way up. One user wrote, "So many companies chose her." "Come on, think about it," said another. "I saw her at a hotel once," someone added. "She was in a private room. Only woman in the whole place." "Hey man, tell us more. Got pictures? Send them privately." Another chimed in. Marcus, thinking I would lose my temper, tried to push his luck during the stream. So can you live with that? He asked. Tentatively, it was all lies, empty accusations designed to twist truth into fiction, to turn a successful woman into something people could objectify and gossip about. But the internet is not a lawless place. That was the reason for organizing the stream, with the legal team present, to make sure every slanderous word could be traced, recorded, and addressed. As I said before, I'm not a kind person. When someone tries to take from me, I do not show mercy. Still, I did not even have to act before long. The flood of hateful comments was met with an even greater wave of support. People who saw through the lies fought back. They pushed the truth to the surface, and after the broadcast ended, our company's social media was overwhelmed with messages of encouragement. Thousands of strangers stood up, not just for me, but for every woman who had ever been made to feel ashamed for simply doing her job, thanks to the company's long-standing good reputation. Something quite unexpected happened that night. During our live stream sales event, the featured products were completely sold out, snapped up by enthusiastic viewers. It turned out to be a surprising victory, one that completely turned the tide. The online smear campaign that Marcus had carefully orchestrated backfired spectacularly and ended up becoming the highlight of our small company's annual report. Soon after, our legal team filed a lawsuit against Marcus, charging him with defamation and attempted extortion. The court did not take his actions lightly, and justice was served. That pair of reckless lovers could now finally be together forever, flying side by side, so to speak, while sewing away on prison uniforms. Once the year-end summaries and planning were finally wrapped up, I boarded another plane and flew abroad once more. I was returning to my favorite vacation spot, a place I loved so much that I had even bought a home there, nestled by the sea. It had always been my private escape, and it was here, quite by chance, that I ran into an old neighbor from elementary school. She was now running a popular bar back in our home country, and the people she knew ranged from respected professionals to society's more colorful characters. I vaguely remembered asking her once, perhaps during a casual chat, if she knew any charming men who had a way of bewitching women with just a glance. I could not recall if I had actually meant it or whether I had some vague plan at the time. But one thing I did remember clearly back when Mila was still around. I had attended a few of her department's dinner parties. I had had a bit too much to drink on one occasion and had spoken too freely. I seem to recall mentioning something about taking out a large life insurance policy on my husband. But it had been so long ago, and all of that was behind me. Now, right now, all I wanted was to enjoy the sunshine, the sound of the waves, and the warm sand beneath my feet. The past could stay where it belonged. I was content to sit quietly, breathing in the ocean air, grateful for the peace that had finally arrived. There on the beach, watching the sky turn golden with the rising sun, a thought came to me with sudden clarity. For years I had been reacting, always responding to what others did, parrying every move like a practiced fencer. But not anymore. I was done playing defense. Back at the villa, I settled on the balcony with my laptop and typed out a message to Ruby. Find the prototype files for our AI customer service system. I want an upgrade proposal on my desk in 3 days. We are launching the first version next quarter. I was no longer content with being a steady small business owner. It was time for this company to rise into the top tier of the industry. The next morning, I drove out to a startup incubator on the edge of town. I signed a lease for an entire floor to establish our new overseas research and development hub. Before leaving, I arranged a dinner meeting with the director, asking him to connect me with a few local tech consultants who could help build the team on the way back to the villa. I spotted a young girl selling handmade crafts along the shore. Her store was neatly arranged, and she worked with quick, confident hands. She greeted passers-by in fluent English, her eyes bright and focused. I stopped to buy 2 wind chimes, then casually asked if she would be interested in an internship. Maybe helping with translation and online marketing. She laughed at first, thinking I was joking, but when I handed her my business card, her eyes widened in surprise. I admired people like her, those who carried light in their eyes, who stood on their own 2 feet, who did not wait to be rescued, because they had already prepared themselves to face the world back at the villa. I brewed a strong cup of coffee and watched the waves crash gently against the rocks outside the window. Then I opened a new document on my computer. At the top, I typed just 4 words: start from zero. This was not about revenge. It was not about proving anything to anyone. It was about reclaiming all the time that had been wasted, all the talent that had been ignored piece by piece. I would take it all back, use it well, and make it shine. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it.